In the year 500 BC, a Chinese philosopher and general by the name of Sun Tzu declared, "If a man knows himself and knows his opponent, he need not fear 100 battles. If a man knows himself and knows not his opponent, for every victory he will suffer a defeat. If a man knows neither himself nor his opponent, he is a fool and will suffer defeat in every battle." Now, knowing ourselves and the principles in which we believe, as important as that is, it is not enough. We must also know our opponent if we are not to be fools and suffer defeat in every battle. To us, communism is merely the current manifestation of certain forces that have been around for a long time under different labels. Long after communism has been destroyed and relegated to the dusty pages of history, these same forces will continue to plague future generations as well, but under a new name. What are these forces? There are two. There are always two, and there are only two. The first we've already identified, collectivism, total government. And the second, amorality, merely a 25-cent word for the complete absence of true moral standards of any kind. These are the twin forces of despotism everywhere, past, present, or future. Peel off the label communism, or fascism, or Nazism, or any other similar ism from history, and what do you find? Although the exterior form may be different, the essence is always the same: total government over the people and the abandonment of morality in public life. Collectivism and amorality. The good people of Germany never stopped to ask what Hitler offered behind his anti-communist slogans and promises of welfare. Most of them had never read Mein Kampf, and of those who did, very few really knew what they were reading. They were unable to recognize those opposing jaws that always constitute tyranny: collectivism and amorality. And so, in their zeal to avoid tyranny, and through their ignorance of the nature of tyranny, they were manipulated into tyranny. And it was all done through the democratic process. Remember, Hitler was voted into power. Could this happen in America? You bet it could. All questions of theory aside, the plain fact is that if we don't defeat communism, we just aren't going to be free, and many of us won't even be alive to continue the ideological debate. And so, even though the defeat of communism is not our primary objective, of life and death necessity, it becomes our first order of business. If we are to know our opponent, therefore, we must now answer the question, what is communism? Now, actually, that's not nearly as hard a question to answer as you might think. The communists themselves give us the definition. They call it Marxism-Leninism, which means simply that communism is a combination of the ideological teachings of Karl Marx and the organizational strategy and tactics laid down by Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov Lenin. Now, all we have to do, really, is understand the ideology of Marx and the tactics of Lenin. If you've read the Communist Manifesto or Das Kapital, then you know that Karl Marx taught only two things: socialism and atheism. Everything else was in support of these two concepts: socialism and atheism. By the way, notice that these are merely different words for collectivism and amorality, and we're back to that again, the essential ingredients for any tyranny. But the words he preferred to use were socialism and atheism, so let's use those. While Marx laid down the ideological base of communism, Lenin created the Communist Party and added the physical organizational form. If you agree with Karl Marx that socialism and atheism are ideologically sound, then by definition you are a Marxist. But that doesn't make you a communist by a long shot. If, in addition to being a Marxist, you also are willing to join the Communist Party founded by Lenin, are willing to subject yourself to the discipline of the party, and unhesitatingly follow the organizational tactics and strategy laid down by the party, then you are a Marxist-Leninist. and then you are a true communist. Therefore, if we are to know our opponent, we must know that communism is not just an ideology, for that would be only Marxism. It is both an ideology and an organization. Let's turn now to the record. This book by Nikita Khrushchev, entitled Socialism and Communism, was printed in English and published in Moscow. Back here on page 158, Khrushchev said, "The Communist Party, founded and tempered by the great Lenin, is a powerful force, comrades. Without the party, we would have been an unorganized mass of people." Now, note that line. Without the party, we would have been an unorganized mass of people. It's a very important concept, and we'll come back to it later. All of us communists are united by the great Marxist-Leninist ideas. The source of our party's strength and invincibility lies in its ideological and organizational cohesion. And so I repeat, communism is both an ideology and an organization. The true characteristics of the Communist Party are to be found not so much in its theories as in its methods of organization. Keep in mind that they are applying a new concept of warfare, the concept of conquering a country from within. How do you conquer a country from within? You conquer it by capturing the organizations that operate inside the country. A labor union, a farm organization or newspaper guild, a teachers' association, a political club, a government agency, etc., are considered as power centers. The sum total of these organizations is the sum total of power. The Communist Party organizes inside of these organizations group by group. To fight them effectively, one has to do the same thing in reverse. Mere resolution passing can't cope with that sort of an enemy. And this, of course, is the reason why the communists have been winning around the world. Not because they're smarter or because they outnumber their opposition, but simply because they're organized. A handful has had the power and effect of thousands. You know, occasionally someone will say to me, "Aren't you rather silly, worried about communism in this country, when there are so few of them? What harm can such a small group do to a big, strong country like ours?" And of course, such people have not done their homework. They have no idea of how communism actually works. Well, they've heard a little bit about the Marxist ideology of communism, but they know nothing about the Leninist organization of communism. They're unaware, for instance, that in the Soviet Union, even after all of these years, the actual number of people who are communists, members of the party, are less than 3% of the total population. In Red China, less than 2%. But more important than that, at the time of takeover, communists have come to power in one country after another with no more than 1/2 of 1% of the population, and in some cases, much less than that. Now, in addition to the advantage of organization, our communist opposition also has the flexibility of being able to resort to completely amoral tactics. Lenin taught that whatever helps to bring communism to power is moral. The only test is, does it work? The leaders of world communism are forever saying that they want peaceful coexistence. Let our two systems, let our two ideologies compete fair and square. They say, let the best ideology win. They always talk about their ideology, but you notice they never say anything about their organization. We're not supposed to even notice that they also have an organization with working units established in every country in the world. And while they're talking about open and fair competition between ideologies, their organization is getting ready to pull the rug right out from underneath us, if it can. Some time ago, the Communist Party published this little booklet entitled A Manual on Organization. It contains their detailed plans for disciplining members, collecting dues, operating secret printing presses, organizing cells in factories, colleges, and farming communities. It even describes the function of a fraction, a unit smaller than the cell itself. A fraction can be composed of 2 or more communists within the same non-communist organization. Their task is to work together secretly for the purpose of gaining control of that organization. The very process described earlier by Joseph Cornfetter. Now, if you haven't read this, and of course most non-communists have not, then it's almost impossible to appreciate the degree to which communism depends on organization rather than ideology. In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable build-ups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind." Now, before concluding this section, there's one more point that needs clarification. You'll notice that so far I have refrained from using the expected phrase, communist conspiracy. But according to the dictionary, a conspiracy simply is a group of two or more people secretly working together using unlawful methods to achieve an evil purpose. Now, are there two or more people in the Communist Party? Obviously. Do they work secretly together, willing to use unlawful means? Yes. And is their goal of communizing America an evil objective? Most Americans would consider it so. If the organization of communism isn't a conspiracy, then definitions and dictionaries are a complete waste of time. So let's not be squeamish about words. Let's call a spade, or to be more exact, call communism precisely what it is, a worldwide criminal conspiracy.